Welcome back. You're watching Today, and 1.5 years have passed since the horrific attack on the International Pentecost Holiness Church in Zuurbekom. It was in July 2020 when heavily armed men entered the church and the gunfire resulted in the deaths of 5 people. Police did arrest 42 suspects and recovered 68 firearms, but congregants have claimed that not all parties involved have been brought to justice. Now, the church members now want the NPA to open an inquest into that attack. eNCA reporter Manqoba Mchunu is following the story. Let's cross to him now for the latest on this particular story. Now, Manqoba, why is the church taking this route almost 2 years after the fact?
Well, Ropo, you recall that following that incident that we saw in July 2020, there were arrests that were made by the police, and those were members from the Jerusalem splinter group of the church who were arrested during that incident. And you recall among them was a soldier, a member of the Metro Police Department, as well as a policeman and a lawyer who were amongst those that were arrested on the scene. And of course, since then, we do know that this matter has been before court. But the accusation at the time, Ropo, from the Zuurbekom faction of this church was that, in fact, it was the Jerusalem church members that had come to attack them at the headquarters of the church itself in Zuurbekom, and claiming that this was over the dispute over the leadership of the church. We do know that the church has been divided into 3 splinter groups since the death of its leader, Clayton McKenzie, and since then there's been a tussle really of who should lead the church. Leonard Modise, who is leading the Zuurbekom faction of the church, saying that he is the rightful one. His members saying that he's the one that was anointed by the leader before his death. But also we've seen other 2 members of the family, another son of Clayton McKenzie, Tsepiso, who is from the Springs faction of the church, also wanting to take over the church. And then there's another one, Michael Sandlana, who's from the Pretoria branch of the church, who says that he's the legitimate leader. So there's been a tussle really when it comes to the issues of leadership. And at the time, the accusation was that it was in fact Michael Sandlana or the Jerusalem faction that was responsible for the attacks, but they're saying that they were not involved because it's their members that were killed. And so we do understand, Rupua, that the NPA has subsequently found that there are no charges that they will continue to investigate. The matter has been struck off the roll, and simply they're saying that they were vilified by the other faction of the Zuurbekom, but they went further to say that in fact they want the NPA to investigate the deaths of the 5 members that belong to their faction, because this has not been investigated up until so far. But they went on, Rupua, to even accuse the police of being in cahoots with the Zuurbekom faction, saying that the police are simply not investigating their cases. But take a listen to what they had to say in terms of this NPA probe that they want from the NPA to actually institute.
The reason we are pushing that the NPA conduct an inquest of the death of the 5 of our church members is to really to ensure that justice is served to the families of the members that were killed, because we need to know who are the real killers, because the 42 members that were arrested are not the killers, as magistrates, the late magistrate Pillay indicated that the police had no evidence that the 42 that were arrested were the killers, because none of the guns or ammunition that were found on the day belonged to any of the 42.
Very briefly, Manqoba, when are we expecting to get some kind of resolution? There's been calls for an inquest, but surely people are going to want to see some closure for the families that were affected during those tragic events.
Indeed, Rupo. In fact, we did speak to some of the families that were there. There were widows that were there, 5 of them, who say that they are simply feeling let down by the police in terms of investigating the deaths of their loved ones. And they're saying that they want to see the wheels of justice turning. They want to see those behind those murders being brought to book, and really to find some sort of closure and answers as to why and how those murders unfolded. But of course, we do understand that there is still a court case that is underway when it comes to the dispute over the leadership in this church. That court process is still going to continue, and so these factions, ultimately it seems like the courts will be the ones that actually decide on who should lead this church. But the Jerusalem faction quite adamant that their leader is the legitimate leader and that the courts will rule in their favor.
Absolutely, Manqoba Mchunu, thank you for those updates, and of course just reminding us of those tragic events that happened over a leadership tussle at the Pentecost Church. You are watching Today on eNCA.